Support the channel on patreon.com/manlightfoot.
Some uranium-238. Shake well. Strike an ordinary match.
We all love the Looney Tunes, right?
Swallow the match. So.
Why wouldn't we? From their quick but well-paced comedy to their lessons to children on how to use a stick of dynamite against your enemies. Well, how not to at least. They were a pillar of animation and comedy that inspired many of the great comedic acts of the past, present, and as well as the future. Where Disney was considered classical music of animation, the Looney Tunes were the jazz of animation. Now, of course, they may seem like a simple phrase, but there's a little more truth to that claim. When you think about jazz, it's a vital musical genre created by black people, no matter what some overrated, overhyped excuse for a musical film failed to get across. Jazz was one of the many major creations that shaped a lot of the musical world, with plenty of pushback against being in the conversation. But that's a story that applies to many places, even in the animation industry, which, with Looney Tunes, was a popular genre in their soundtrack library, so there's some connection to Looney Tunes having influence from black culture through their use of jazz. But it goes further than that when it comes to the Looney Tunes and where their influence starts. You ever wonder who the first Looney Tune is? Some of y'all might say Bugs if you're more on the casual side. Some fans might go for Porky, which is pretty close. I even mentioned it in my Dave the Earth Blew Up video, which you should go watch later. But hardcore fans know the one where it all started. The ones Warner Brothers kept hidden for so long and even now are reluctant to talk about.
You lie! You lie!
Okay, not really, but you get dramatic flair. They're actually pretty easy to find out about. They really were not that hard to research. The very first Looney Tune, Bosko the Talking Kid, and his girlfriend Honey. Created back in 1929, Bosko is a character that became fairly unknown amongst those in the animation space, for obvious reasons as you just look at him and can tell. We'll get more into detail though. Joined by his girlfriend Honey, which... Oh, Honey. We gonna talk about black women's portrayal in these cartoons, don't you worry. These were characters that started the Looney Tunes and by proxy helped American animation as a whole down the path that we see it on today. But they sadly are also a product of a very racist past that also shaped the film industry in general. Their whole creation was inspired by the traditional American blackface minstrel shows. Now, this is not going to be a full breakdown of the racist cartoons or full history breakdown of those minstrel shows. There's plenty of channels and books and libraries that you can visit that will tell you all about that stuff or has it covered in full depth. And I can only look at those horrible racist insulting faces for so long. But this is more so a look over where and who a lot of animation tropes started from, as well as how Bosko and Honey shaped the foundation of the Looney Tunes and animation in general, as well as figure out whether Bosko and Honey could work in this day and age among the Looney Tunes roster, since it does feel wrong that the Looney Tunes started with black characters that don't get to stand with them currently, especially since other major iconic characters of various dubious origins get to stay in the spotlight. Y'all might be wondering what possessed a 31-year-old to want to discuss an old-ass cartoon character like Bosko, especially since he came and went before even my grandma was born.
Damn, nigga!
Well, this is mostly inspired by Disney/Sonic comic artist and terrorist of food John Gray. Yes, that John Gray. He has haunted my timeline with many horrific assaults on the culinary arts. But also he made a great thread going over the start of a lot of animation tropes like the white gloves and their attachment to minstrel shows, which we'll cover in a minute. But as well as my mom suggested, I start getting more into black folks' unspoken history when it comes to this country in lieu of certain regimes in charge. Trump's a bitch, man. So I've decided to showcase our place in the animation industry, which, if you're not new to the channel, I've touched a little bit on in the past, but I do think there's always more to be explored when it comes to our history in animation, especially when Trump's circus acts running our country and trying to deny basic history. I think it's a good time as any to make sure this history doesn't get forgotten. The most important being how Bosko shaped a lot of animation tropes while being based on black people, profiting off of our talents, but weirdly enough, it's surprisingly on the better end of those racist cartoons.
Man, what the fuck is you talking about?
What the fuck was that? I'm sorry, man. You know, I wasn't thinking about it when I did it. I should have said like Burger King.
Which feels gross to say, but walk with me here. The first thing to note about Bosko is his designs. We'll get further into it later on, but what's of note is the inspiration. It's no secret that Bosko is based on those minstrel shows. You can easily tell by his face being a reverse of those racist caricatures, which isn't surprising considering the time period he originated in. He very much represents white people's perception on black people, both back during the Great Depression and in many instances even now, where we're only seen and wanted for our talents. But what's tricky about Bosko, and sort of gross to think about, is he's sort of a better representation of that ignorant ideology. But we're getting ahead of ourselves here. It all starts in the forgotten decade of 1920s through the 1930s. I'm not going to regale you with what was going on with that time period, especially with the same mistakes being repeated right now, mainly because this ain't the channel to dive into that type of stuff. This ain't what used to be the History Channel. Let's just say some major things were going on with the world that eventually led to the Great Depression, changing the landscape of American culture and industries. The biggest focus here is the animation industry, particularly the studio of Warner Brothers and two animators named Rudolph Ising and Hugh Harmon. Two white former Disney animators, and I guess at this point former Warner Brothers animators, Bazinga, that created the OG roster of Looney Tunes and Merry Melody one-off characters that sadly would be lost to time. We're talking before Porky and Daffy. This roster includes the likes of Piggy.
Who the fuck is this?
Yeah, it's basically just prototype Porky, Foxy and Roxy. I'll get a bit into it later, but I feel I ain't gotta tell y'all what's wrong with these designs. Look, it was the 20s to 30s. People were just trying to get what they could. But anyway, they got their start at Disney in 1927 working on a live-action / animated short subject called Alice Comedies.
Who the fuck is?
Basically, it was a short film showcase, which, being Disney, isn't surprising. They developed the idea for Bosko before Mickey, believe it or not. But before then, they left Disney to work on the Oswald cartoons for Universal. And listen, there's a whole mess of stuff going on back then between all these animators and studios, and if I went over all of it, we'd be here all day and off topic. There's a full video essay series by Kaiser Beam that goes over the full history of these animators, and you should definitely go check them out. The biggest thing to note though is that it's all Walt's fault that these guys left Disney. He was so awful to these animators that he, 1, basically tricked into moving to Cali saying they'd be partners, only to 2, treat like shit and underpay and degrade. Disney helped form his greatest rival in Warner Brothers, which isn't a first for the company. How are you gonna be so awful you create 2 of your worst enemies that actually outdo you multiple times, with mascots that are there to spite you? How does that happen twice within 100 years, bro? They're the same company! Make it make sense, people! But regardless, they developed their own style of comedy and animation that would be the foundation for the Looney Tunes with Bosko and Honey, that great sense of timing in sync with the music. It's so distinct that you could point it out in the old Oswald the Lucky Rabbit cartoons even. They created Bosko when they left Universal and went to work for Warner and to get in on the talkie craze at the time. You know, films with talking instead of just piano and title cards. Pay attention, this will be on the test. They had Bosko's copyright registered as Negro Boy under his name.
I hate it here.
There was definitely better ways to describe us back then, but old white people just refused to not be ignorant or racist. To be a smidgen fair, Warner Brothers was better at racial portrayals, marginally, but we'll get to that. They first showed off Bosko in a demo short called Bosko the Talking Kid. This is possibly where the more racist angles to Bosko exist the most. 1, the design is way too monkey looking, but we'll rip that to shreds in a minute. 2, Bosko is literally being told to sing and dance by a white man in Jim Crow era 1920s. And 3, he very much is talking in that blackface minstrel talk.
Well, here I is, and I sure feel good. Oh, you're feeling good, do you? Yeah, I'm just out of the pen.
Fuck!
Yeah, Bosko easily could have been one of the worst characters, but this was just a demo to show off animation techniques they would utilize for Bosko's shorts, such as using dialogue instead of just a soundtrack and sound effects, which was actually ahead of the curve of the talkie craze that would come in just a few years later, which is honestly pretty crazy to think right then. Some comedic techniques being used here first, with the character breaking the fourth wall and talking to the audience, all started here. Bosko would technically be changed a bit before the official premiered. Not fully, but enough to lose some offensiveness. But anyway, the duo's original characters for Warner Brothers besides Bosko never really took off. How many of you remember Foxy?
I have no idea who this is.
Now those of you that know or don't know who this is, can you tell the reason why this character flopped? Take your time. Seriously, there was no way they were going to get away with these designs, which they didn't because the mouse came hunting the fox with a copyright case. Honestly, it's not helped by the fact that Harmon would tell animators to study Mickey cartoons even for Bosko. Hell, Bosko got criticized for being too much of a pastiche of Mickey, but again, we'll get to that. The one thing I can say is little is really known about these guys' personal lives. White people definitely hated us around that time of Bosko's creation since, you know, it was Jim Crow era. Blackface was very prominent around the time, with plenty of racist cartoons from Disney to Warner that were made, even with these guys as well. But I'm not sure if these guys were operating out of malice or just ignorant fondness towards black folk. The Censored 11 are a gross portrayal of black people, but weirdly enough, some of them also work as a sort of gross flattery of black folks. Coal Black and the Seven Dwarves, yes, I'm aware that name does not help my case, but bear with me, it's not really that bad as a regular Looney Tunes short, save for the implication of Cole being the poor opposite of the rich white counterpart, as well as that scene. But overall, it does play like a regular normal cartoon, which was a lot of Bosko's cartoons. Rudolph Eisen tried saying that Bosko wasn't inspired by the Black Minstrel shows and was supposed to just be an ink spot, hence the name Bosko the Talk Ink Kid. But come on, you don't give him that type of speaking voice if he's just supposed to be an indiscernible drop of liquid, as well as dropping the Talk Ink Kid name within the title of all of his shorts afterwards. Again, even though they did drop the accent, there did seem to be a consciousness about race when it came to Bosko and Honey's portrayal a little bit, save for the designs. The characters never do anything stereotypical though, but once things started getting rocky between them and Leon Schlesinger and Warner Brothers, the duo left, taking Bosko and Honey with them. This resulted in the creation and rise of the current cast of Looney Tunes characters, with Porky and Daffy being the starters, but not without their other star ahead of them, Buddy, who animators like Bob Clampett said was Bosko, but in whiteface. I tell you now, this history just gets funnier and funnier the more you look into it. Seriously, please watch Kaiser Beam's whole video essay series on it. It's genuinely some good stuff. These animators were wildin' back then, man. Needless to say, nobody liked Buddy since he was just a lesser Bosko, so he got scrapped and replaced with Porky. Learning from their mistakes with not getting the rights to Oswald, Bosko and Honey went on to get a few shorts under MGM, even giving him and Honey a redesign, which... Dog. This might actually be worse. This was MGM, and if you've seen their Happy Harmony shorts, you know they make humans look, a little horrifying. So I don't think MGM were gonna give us something less offensive. Bosko didn't really get any traction when they put him under the Happy Harmonies banner, so he fell to obscurity until Cartoon Network's Toonheads in the 90s did an episode dedicated to acknowledging these old obscure cartoons. Then Warner Brothers followed up years later by putting up a few Bosko shorts on some of the collections, with Whoopi Goldberg talking about these old cartoons' place in history. She honestly says something that is important to think about with a lot of these cartoons, particularly on Warner's end, that these animators weren't in it to say that they're trying to spite us, but rather just thinking, hey, that's funny, even if they're just not thinking too much about other people.
Now, while humor may have been the intent of such caricatures, they also had the effect of revealing society's unfair and hurtful representations of people of color, women, and ethnic groups.
Plenty of us can admit to finding a lot of offensive stuff funny, South Park being a current major example of it. And we all know comedians do have to push the boundaries of what is comfortable for people, but what's important is being able to reel it back when people realize, hey, it's not funny. When people say it's not funny, you reel it in. And Warner Brothers, to their credit, did kind of reel it in when they could. So when it comes to Bosko and Honey as characters inspired by blackface, they're on the ignorant side rather than the racist, malicious intent side. In fact, there was one instance where one of the censored 11 cartoons caught flack for black people being portrayed as angels, simply because black angels is considered blasphemous. Now, I know that scene from Ryan Coogler's Center seemed out of place in terms of the topic of this video, but I just need that there for my own personal sanity. I think all my other black folk can understand why. I just hate, like, so much.
And a lot of white folk have demonstrated eloquently that they don't have no sense.
There's even DVDs available dedicated to Bosko's shorts. I even bought a few of these just for this video, honestly. One thing you can give props to Warner is that they didn't hide away from Bosko. They tried to revamp him, but then settled for keeping him as part of their history, even if they don't use him at all, but we'll get to that. Now, when I mentioned Bosko being a better representation of black people is with a heavy asterisk, but by no means am I saying this is a good representation of us or that Warner is absolved of their sins. Far fucking from it. But there is a conversation to be had about how Bosko's cartoons had a better handling of black perception in the mainstream, even with these egregious designs that screams anti-blackness.
Because now Nick's got more of the Looney Tunes you want. More Bugs. More Daffy. And no Bosko. Sorry, Bosko. Get a better look at the Looney Tunes you want every weekday on Nickelodeon.
Of course, I wouldn't just talk about the history of Bosko without actually going into what his cartoons are. Bosko's shorts have a basic premise of things go wrong around the character or just simple hijinks. You know, that typical shtick that was very popular around that era. Usually because of the character, but in Bosko's case, things go wrong around him, but he has a better attitude about things. Well, that is until he's pushed too far. The shorts aren't profound pieces that speak to big issues. I mean, why would they? It was the 30s and people kind of just wanted good cheap laughs during the Great Depression. Hell, some of the shorts don't even have a real ending. What the shit? How you gonna end with dude getting mutilated? There's even one where instead of it ending, the white filmmakers get lazy and walk off instead of ending the cartoon. It's funny as hell and would be a popular gag later on, but jeez, Bosko could not catch a break, man. Watching the shorts, I can't pretend there isn't some charm to them. That mainly has to do with the fact that this is the foundation the Looney Tunes is built on, and I did grow up with the Looney Tunes. I can't pretend like there's not a bit of nostalgia there, but at the same time, I recognize this is something that was created based on black culture, as well as it's to a degree many others' comedy was built on this. These simple stories of cartoon characters treating everything around them as instruments started at Disney, and it was a hit obviously. Plus it's done by people who pioneered a lot of these tropes of the time, so it makes sense that there's some familiar charm to them. That being said, the real pioneers of this were black people, since these gags come from blackface minstrel shows, which were inspired by black people and our culture, to a very mocking degree, but sometimes to a degree where it actually showed our plight. Hell, Warner Brothers' big bread and butter at the time was a film called The Jazz Singer, which pushed blackface into the mainstream by being a hit for the studio. Some minstrel shows used our culture in an assimilation and degrading manner, mainly pushing stereotypes that black people were lazy and that slavery was a good thing. If you wonder how the terrible mindset persists today, blame minstrel shows and their influence on the film industry. Hell, blame the fact that people are still trying to do blackface as an offense to black people in this day and age. But only a small few minstrel shows actually did try to educate about black people's plight. Now, those ended up getting banned in the South, and you wonder why. In fact, there are reports of black actors being used in some of these shows as troupes, like William Henry Lane, some forming their own groups and just traveling the roads and doing their own shows. But sadly, blackface performances were the only way for black performers to get on the stage to mainstream audiences. But some did give white audiences an unintended sympathy towards black folks, since they saw how insulting some of the minstrel shows could be. Or, in some cases, see that black people are sympathetic, or that we were downtrodden at the time. Or saw through the bullshit of trying to say taking a break after doing backbreaking labor all day is lazy. Even though it was from a racist angle, minstrel shows inadvertently worked against themselves and actually got people to start sympathizing with black people. Even if there is still ignorance in the mix. Gotta love when racism hurts itself.
Is it you and your stupid racism?
I'm not gonna break down all 39 of the Warner Brothers Bosko shorts. They tend to run practically the same with that old character yutzing about premise these old tunes were known for. We'd be here all day and I got some black guy things to do, so I'll just stick to the notable ones while making my bigger point. The first official release short was Sinking in the Bathtub, which saw the introduction of Bosko and Honey. Upon your first reaction, you'd think there'd be something egregious with the cartoon, like nothing but racist jokes at black people's expense, but instead it just runs like a Mickey and Minnie cartoon, but without the handsiness.
Oh my.
Well, mostly, but at least it's consensual. And hint, Michael. The short is just Bosko and Honey having fun on their date until things go awry as usual in these shorts.
Shit.
My man's got put through it, but his girl's smiling in the end, so it's not all bad. It's genuinely a wholesome little short. Bosko is just a playful little guy going on a date with his Honey, who...
Oh my goodness!
Yeah, if they were racist in the depiction of black boys, they damn sure were gonna half-ass the black girls. Just straight copy and paste and slap a bow on it and call her Honey.
I hate it here.
What did Malcolm say?
The most disrespected person in America is the black woman. The most unprotected person in America is the black woman. The most neglected person in America is the black woman.
They did not give Honey much care with her design, but hell, that's what's wrong with Bosko's. But that's coming, just be patient. Anyway, the next short, Congo Jazz, actually has a bit of development for Bosko. He loses the minstrel accent in favor of a generic high-pitched Mickey imitation, which was a common voice for cartoons at the time, particularly because of this team.
That's all, folks.
Though he slips back and forth with the accent on rare occasions, sometimes at the end of the first few shorts.
That's all, folks.
But why?
It's as bad of an insulting accent as you'd expect, but besides that, the cartoons honestly aren't too offensive. They just run like typical oldies cartoons with them just being vehicles for gags, at least like the non-racist ones.
I ain't lying, kick a lion in this crap.
There are other shorts worth note, mainly because some of them confound me. Now, I'm no boxing or Olympics expert, but I'm sure it's not supposed to be that type of deep tissue for an event. The shorts are your harmless fare of a character dealing with wacky situations. Bosko is just a happy-go-lucky guy that plays music through whatever he can get his hands on. Usually it's done to be a menace, but with Bosko, everyone loves it. His antics tend to bring joy to people's faces. Though there's some shorts that start just fine, but there's always something around the end that ruins things, in rare occasions though. Of course, we have the most egregious one in Bosko Shipwrecked, which plays out fine enough with Bosko stuck on a lost island. It's smooth, ruins itself by putting Bosko in a cannibal village. Seriously, what the fuck is up with white people in depicting black people as tribal or even Neanderthal-like? It's always two of the same tired-ass jokes between races in each generation, which is so stupid considering it's basically the only blemishes that occur within the short.
Why are you the way that you are?
The biggest stereotype you could say about Bosko is that he plays on white people's belief that black people are just happy-go-lucky and love music and have rhythm. And it's one of those cases of misguided gross flattery. Like Amos and Andy for any film and radio majors here. Some of these shows turn the perception of black people around. You honestly can find Bosko and Honey charming as characters aside from their designs. They're just a fun-loving couple that does typical black and white comedy shtick with some hiccups here and there. this dog really set my mans up, and did it in the freakiest way too.
Bad dog.
They don't push many harsh stereotypes like saying blacks are lazy or just shoot crap all day or even just eat watermelon. Bosko and Honey seem more inspired by minstrel shows that saw black people and culture as entertaining as something to assimilate into. Still ignorant, but a shift was able to occur within that bit of ignorance. At least on the American black folks end. African immigrants catch crazy strays out of nowhere with that shipwreck Bosko short. I do not know why they do that shit. It's so horrible. But Bosko and Honey are just people going through life with a smile. At least that's how you can read them. I know I might sound crazy here, but bear with me a bit. When it comes to these major studios and the portrayal of black folks at the time, Warner Brothers was better than Disney on this. Hell, Mickey's second short, Gallopin' Gaucho, is so racist they still hide it away. Wanna know why? Because they have to grapple with the fact that Mickey was mainly a blackface portrayal from his inception. Disney will never acknowledge this very important piece of their history because of how racist it is. Warner Brothers at least owned up to the racism by acknowledging Bosko's existence, even putting Bosko on the front of their golden collections. The shorts in and of themselves are more flattering to Bosko. He's treated like an average person who just has random things happen to him.
You're just in time to wash the dishes.
Not me! Not me!
La 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 la, la 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 la, ain't got fun?
Sometimes it goes right for him, sometimes it goes wrong, but never because of anything regarding race or anything. He does have the happy-go-lucky stereotype that was prevalent in many blackface shows, but here it's more from someone with their wits about them. Of course, I can't ignore choices they made in terms of Bosko's living situation, and you notice how everyone around Bosko and Honey is an animal. Nary another human in sight. You can easily see a separate class system at play for Bosko's world. The few times you see white guys in these shorts is when Bosko's either having a box or go against them and lose on top of that. Even though history said otherwise when it came to Jack Johnson knocking the shit out of Tommy Burns in 1908. They can show black people being happy, but not over a white man's misery. Cause let's not forget, this was segregated Jim Crow time. But that's not played up or anything in the shorts, though it does speak a bit of the minds behind the drawings. Seeing black people in the lower echelons, but with the caveat of not beating down black people. At least, not with these characters. God, did they make up the ignorant racism in those censored 11 cartoons. But regardless of ignorant creators, Bosko and Honey on the other hand are just regular black folk. Not to say they make up for other racist depictions, but they live like anybody else. It's crazy to say they were the better portrayal of black people at the time, even by their own studio standards. Can't fake as a black person, I can't help but find Bosko and Honey endearing, even if their creation didn't have the intention. I feel they could have been beloved characters among black folk of the time, at least if their shorts could have been shown to us. Remember, segregated Jim Crow. These two inadvertently represented black folk in a positive light in a deep hole of trash after trash after trash of that time. Even the few Bosko shorts that became trash in the end. You might think I'm crazy to say this, and maybe I've skipped a doctor's appointment or 12, but this one short called Bosko in Person honestly solidified to me why I found myself so endeared to these characters.
You're finally awake. You were trying to cross the border, right?
I genuinely had a smile on my face watching this. You wanna know why? This one short shows off exactly what makes Looney Tunes so great. This amazing high energy with immaculate timing, funny expressions. Well, except for the one where Honey does an impression of that performer that coined the Aunt Jemima character.
The what?
Before you ask, that's a whole can of worms I sure as hell can't cover fully in this video, though they do have Honey do a Billie Holiday-like performance for the whole thing, who is a true legendary black artist. For there to be a homage to a black female artist as great as Billie Holiday in those times, it almost makes you look past the design. Almost. But regardless, it's the complete foundation of one of animation's major pioneers on full display. The full essence of the comedic act and gags of what got me to love animation in the first place, what got me to love the Looney Tunes in the first place. All while this was built up from years of shorts. I may have been able to binge the shorts in the present day, but remember, these shorts were spread out through the years. As you watch, you see them getting better as they go along and distinguish Bosko and Honey as their own unique characters, moving away from the Mickey and Minnie allegations. This short feels like the pinnacle of that growth, and it's all being performed by these black characters, the very first Looney Tunes.
Cosmic.
It's hard to hate these characters because of how likable they come across. The black power couple is just owning the stage, and that is all inspired by black people in performances. You see these black characters going all out just to get a laugh. It's obviously from the lens of white people's ignorant perception of black people. But Bosko and Honey were at least proving that there's more to black people than just stereotypes to white audiences. But to know that one of the animation industry's biggest foundational giants were inspired and built on black people's talent, it can make you feel good as a black artist in the animation space. It lets you know your talents were always enough, if not better in some cases. It just sadly can get exploited, as history and the present has shown. But that's why we stay woke to these situations and try to educate people properly on the real history.
Bear with me for a second, let me put y'all on game.
For instance, when it comes to Bosko and Honey's dancing shtick, it's based on tap dance, which has origins from black culture. Its origins come from Master Juba, otherwise known as William Lane Henry, like I mentioned earlier, an 18th century performer who blended Irish jig and English clog with African rhythms and dance that black folk would do on the plantations. Tap dance became a major form of dance throughout America, with William Henry being one of the first black performers to go on tour and show the dance off to a mainstream audience. This form of dance was constantly used in theater and film, and Bosko and Honey take clear inspiration from it. That's black culture that shaped entertainment in this country, done in a pretty respectful way. Sadly, tap got bastardized and whitewashed by racist white people with stuff like Sambo and Uncle Tom minstrel dances and shit. The Sambo character is based on a white guy watching a crippled black person move around. Yeah, ain't that ugly. Seriously, if you want a good breakdown of these Sambo and Minstrel show characters and all the differences of them, watch Pillboy's new video on it. He actually breaks it down pretty well. But thankfully, this history isn't lost. The dance and the use of music from Bosko and Honey is clearly based on positive observations of black folks and culture at the very least. Still being used in later animated media and stuff like Happy Feet, a very classic movie if you are from a black family that watched it, trust me. This even comes with Looney Tunes' heavy use of jazz. It's why you see them constantly parodying jazz musicians or have characters play to the rhythm of jazz music. For many, the Looney Tunes was an introduction to jazz music. It's because of them I discovered Cab Calloway, who they made a whole short based around a song he did. Black people and culture inspired so much, but sadly can't get the recognition for what we build and inspire. These characters help shift perceptions on black culture, and it genuinely sucks that they couldn't be presented to us. So maybe we could have had a say in what could happen with them. It's why we create our own characters that can represent us properly, since who can represent you better than you? But Bosko and Honey at least were a better representation that probably would have been far stronger had black folks been the ones to call the shots with them. Hell, let's not forget what happened when we got our hands on vampires. To have a black character that turns out okay in the end most of the time was unthinkable back then. Bosko and Honey could have been characters black kids of the time could look up to. Not to say Bosko would have led to a big spike in black people in animation, since I don't have evidence of that, but there definitely would have been a better interest from black folk. Black people are in a much better space now to be able to create our own animated works. Hell, I've worked on some.
What? Why did you do that, Sia? I don't know. She said he was a vampire and he was acting like a pervert.
Check out the 3 tomes over on Brie Animator's channel, now with the animatic editor and sound designer on it. But you can't help but dream what could have been. Warner did try to rectify the design at one point, but black people still weren't really a part of that conversation. Honestly, I think Bosko should finally get a true black perspective on his and Honey's design. Hey y'all, I wanted to take some time to do a spotlight of some indie projects and shows that are already out right now, because I really think indie is a very important thing that we should show our love and support for. These are projects that are made by people who are very passionate about the medium of animation, and we definitely need to give some type of support to them, and I just wanted to use my platform to give a shout out to a few every now and then. I'm gonna make it more means to put you in the know about these indie projects and shows that are out there for you to support. And man, do I got a special indie shout out for you guys. What makes it special? I actually got to work on it. The Three Tomes is an animatic pilot created by Brie Animator that focuses on witches, vampires, magic, and love triangles as a cherry on top. It weaves all this together following a black teen girl named Tammy who gets wrapped up in the supernatural when she comes across an unusual magic tome. Now she must navigate her changing high school life while dealing with escaped spirits. All while a mysterious figure and his vampire minions named Alonzo and Darius seek to take the tomes for their own nefarious reasons, as well as another vampire named Yogayu who has his own plans for the tomes, and potentially Tammy. Tammy is a shy character that has to find her inner strength to overcome all this magical craziness. Thankfully, she has her friends Sia and Shirley to help her out.
Sia, you should really be at home.
Anywhere Tammy goes, I'm going. Thanks.
Mostly. It's a fun pilot filled with action, drama, romance, vampires catching bats upside the head.
You got knocked the fuck out, man!
Oh, and did I mention it's anime as hell? It's got everything. If you like animes like Sailor Moon or Cardcaptor Sakura, this is right up your alley. And like I mentioned, I was part of the crew for this pilot as the animatic editor and sound designer. I got to see firsthand the dedication put into this pilot with the amazing storyboards and animation by this cast and crew. There's fun characters, an intriguing story, great music, and amazing art, all tied neatly together with teenage angst. So head on over to Brie Animator's channel and check out the Three Tomes pilot. Hey y'all, times have been pretty rough recently, and so people have been going without food and shelter, and so we can definitely do a little bit more to help them out. So be sure to donate to your local food pantry. The one I'm putting up is one I donate locally to, but you can definitely donate to one that's closest by you. Any little bit you can give helps. First time black people got to animate us on our own merit, so of course the crew went all out. My biggest contention with Maya is she comes across too Disney princessy. Jimmy Neutron should hold a more major prominent place in 3D animation history just because it's like this movie still looks pretty good. Talked a lot about Bosko and Honey as characters, but something that can't be ignored is their god-awful designs. It genuinely sucks that these black characters are stained by their anti-black history in their design, but the weird thing is their efforts to try to fix them. At one point after Ising and Harmon left Warner Brothers, they went to MGM to produce Bosko shorts under the Happy Harmonies label. After 2 shorts with the original designs were made, but with color, changes to Bosko and Honey's designs were then made. These shorts weren't well received even though they made Bosko and Honey look more human. Kinda. But they did show a shift in trying to be authentic with black people. They even casted a black boy to voice Bosko, adding some authenticity, but Bosko still came across as stereotypical.
Hey yo, what the fuck?
Hell, with the redesign here, Bosko actually pushes stereotypes more than before. Now he's actually a lazy black boy that tries to get out of doing stuff. His adventures a lot of the time are just in his head. His clothing makes him look downtrodden versus his long sleeve shirt and pants. And Honey still has the same face problem, but it's worse here since Bosko looks worse as well. Them being made to look more kid-like works against them since back then kid characters were a bit of a struggle to make interesting. Their original designs were more age ambiguous. Even though they're registered as boy and girl, there's some freedom to say they're at most young adults, but them resembling kids makes you want to tune out since they were limited to what you could do with kid characters back then. It's no wonder the MGM shorts didn't take off since outside of Bosko, they're a little too soft.
We won't wander way up yonder, we'll stay home with you. Stay at home, where the grass is good. Stay at home.
They're just so soft and lame and
slow.
They lack any edge to them, which is what Bosko had to his shorts and by extension the Looney Tunes. So Happy Harmonies wasn't about to fit Bosko and Honey too well. Cause I mean it, watching these for the video reminded me of a childhood hatred I had for these shorts. Genuinely the worst shorts to come on the channel as a kid. Oh, you thought you were gonna get Bugs and Daffy with hilarious slapstick? No, you get the most bullyable animals prancing around. The level of boredom we as kids at the time faced having to sit through these things needed to be studied. I felt sorry for those that suffered through these things in a theater. Would have made me walk out before the actual film starts. Not to mention these shorts turned up the racism for Bosko. The last one, known as Little Old Bosko and the Cannibals, actually tells you how stupid that one wanted to be just by the title alone. They do try to catch themselves by making them frogs, but you know where the cannibal stereotypes were coming from. Honestly, the dumbest thing about the Happy Harmony shorts is that they all basically are just Bosko being a daydreamer. He doesn't really go on any adventures like that in these shorts. It's just a far cry from the fun Bosko that's under the Looney Tunes moniker, which is why these shorts weren't popular. You can appreciate there being early attempts at authenticity in the 30s, with Bosko's accent returning, but with it being betrayed through an actual black voice actor. Sadly, he went unaccredited. What charm the character had got lost with the redesign. It's interesting to know that once Warner Brothers consumed MGM for a bit and actually got Bosko back, they tried redesigning and reintroducing Bosko and Honey in the early 90s. In the Tiny Toons Adventure episode Fields of Honey, which I actually saw as a kid, Honey and Bosko got reintroduced. Asterisks. Anyway, the episode revolves around Babs needing a mentor, but sadly there aren't any female Looney Tunes to take up the job. I guess Granny, Witch Hazel, Petunia, and Penelope was busy that day. This leads to Babs finding out about Honey, a legendary Looney Tune that's been forgotten. So she seeks out Honey to be her mentor and discover there's whole swaths of forgotten black and white cartoons. It's an episode that's there to remind people about the classic cartoons of old so they aren't lost to time. It works like the other episode of Tiny Toons that used the other original Merry Melodies cast like Foxy and Roxy. Also, I can genuinely say I hated my time watching this. This whole episode is just focused on Babs making a theater to see Honey's cartoons. Along the way, it's just dumb parody gags.
Honey! So if you want to scream real loud, bug your folks to take you to those neato cartoons starring Honey!
Every word you just spoke has made me violently angry.
Honey and Bosko don't even come in till the end, so there's not much time with them, so you come to a realization that you just spent 20 minutes of your researching just to watch Buster's not sister do a bunch of unfunny jokes that it doesn't really say anything significant about these cartoons, just that they should be remembered even if these designs forgot them. All with this shit looking like it was animated on a busted pottery wheel, that Bosko and Honey didn't even really play too much into the history as well as barely play into the role of the episode, and now you recognize why this bullshit cartoon is at the bottom of the list of Steven Spielberg produced cartoons.
This art hurt me! This art sucks! You're living a lie!
Damn, they really made me crash out on Tiny Toons, man.
Take it easy, it's just a drawing.
Still a big fan of the team's other work, but damn. Thank goodness for Toonheads doing the real work later on. They changed up the story for Bosko and Honey, saying they fell out of popularity because of Porky's debut. Even though it's mainly due to the rights issue with Ising and Harmon leaving Warner Brothers for MGM and taking Bosko with them. You get why they changed it up a little, since kids don't need to think about copyrights with cartoons, but it probably did need to be changed up in this way. Maybe just mention that Bosko and Honey left to control their careers and things maybe didn't work out too well. It's not wrong to want to give them a more updated look. I'm sure the team was just trying to be respectful of black folk when it comes to Bosko and Honey's designs, but changing what were black characters into dogs, which honestly feels worse, wasn't the best to go about it. Now time for the asterisks. For the sake of cultural sensitivity, i.e. white fragility, Bosko and Honey are given redesigns that honestly doesn't fix the problem with them. If anything, it ignores the problem. They made them dogs and made them basically the prototypes for the Warner siblings, even going as far as to make Honey more of the star, placing her as more of the start of the female Looney Tunes down the line. Of course, it still took them a long minute to actually have more female Looney Tunes fully in the cast, besides Witch Hazel and Granny. Sorry, Petunia and Penelope. Hell, they didn't get Lola correct until the 2010s with the Looney Tunes show. But to be real, I think it's good that a later generation saw these characters and recognized their important legacy. And I give some more props for choosing Honey and giving her the flowers, since she is the first female Looney Tunes that doesn't get as much talk as Bosko did. She's foundational and she's a fun character that deserves recognition alongside Bosko. Not to mention the racist design choices for her. It should be acknowledged where the Looney Tunes got their start, but with true history at the forefront. It shouldn't be a revision that has to make a story up about these characters, especially since Bosko and Honey originated a lot of the Looney Tunes gags. Hell, a lot of animation design started with Bosko. You know, the white gloves? Something you've seen so many cartoon characters, from Mickey to Bugs to Sonic the freaking Hedgehog. That design trope came from minstrel performers' outfits. They would wear black suits and paint their hands and faces black, but their hands could get lost against the suit, so they wore white gloves, making the hands stand out. Like I mentioned earlier, Mickey was supposed to be a minstrel character full on. That's why a lot of his earlier works have such racist depictions in them.
Bro, I'm really about to get your piccochini, that boy. They go that collard green, yeah, that boy.
Even though Bosko and Honey were created by white people, they are black characters. They count towards black representation since we weren't really shown in a positive light before, and they were able to break the mold. And this was using animation, whereas live action still was way too scared to show a black person on screen positively. The most notable racist film of all time, Birth of a Nation, depicted black people as nothing but animals hungry for white women, originating the idea of the term thug. This shit literally inspired the KKK to even come back. These minstrel skits and shows were also the world's introduction to black Americans and black people in general. Yeah, that's right, these horrible minstrel shows molded a lot of the anti-blackness around the world that we've seen countless times and even to this day. Hi, Mr. Popo and all early big-lipped anime black character designs. Of course they got better, but it's still a matter of rough beginnings. When moving pictures took over as the biggest form of media during the 19th century, the world was getting fed white America's perception of black people and our culture. So this resulted in a lot of immigrants of European, Asian, Hispanic/Latino, and even African countries to come to the US already with bias against black American people. White supremacy is a bitch, dude. It really is a divide and conquer strategy that we gotta get away from.
People need reminding, ain't nothing cool about being a Nazi.
Foreign Man in a Foreign Land covers this diaspora in more depth over on his channel if you truly want the breakdown of these racial tensions. But the main point is the minstrel shows push so many harsh stereotypes out there that it created manufactured tensions with black Americans and the rest of the world. Bosko and Honey at the least helped a bit in changing the narrative within all the blackface garbage the American industry was putting out. That honestly should be addressed when it comes to these characters' place in the Looney Tunes history, and just the entertainment industry's history in general. There really was a missed opportunity with this episode had they involved some black folk in the conversation for Bosko and Honey that could have been a great learning experience. Yeah, they would have had to address the uncomfortableness of their designs, but it would have shown how far we've come. Even used to point out how black people are drawn better by this time now. And plus, if black folk were involved, we could have avoided this bullshit.
Yo, check it out, check it out. Honey cartoons is what I'm talking about. This girl's so funny, yeah.
Whack-ass parody rapping and wasted time aside, to change Bosko and Honey into animals erase what they could represent. Major pillars of American comedy. Or more importantly, a piece of black history. They could have been more of a major move towards getting more black folk into animation for its time. Just knowing we have some level of skin in the origin of the animation game could have inspired so many black kids to want to start drawing. Again, I don't fault the Tiny Toons crew for the change, I just noticed there were missed opportunities. Really, they just needed a Mickey Mouse-like update. Obviously give them brown skin and clothing reflective of their time period, or update it a little bit so it fits, or it's just more so can fit with any time period. For Honey, obviously change her face and hair. Make her look like her own person, change the bow tie into a handkerchief, or give her a black flapper girl hairstyle. There was plenty of inspiration for black flapper girls. Actually, she already had a handkerchief in the Bosko at the beach short. This could have been workable for her original design, because that shape up she has is a tragedy.
I hate it here.
Seriously, if Bosko and Honey had black creators, or at least some consultants, their hair would have looked way better. Now let me finally address Honey's lazy design. Of course, it wasn't uncommon to have the girlfriend character basically be a carbon copy of the male character. Mickey and Minnie were the blueprint for this trope, and that worked for animal characters, but here's where it's insulting. Honey just has Bosko's face. Just put a bow on top and make her hair a little bit more pointy. Not to mention also make it's just playing into that stereotype of how a lot of white people saw black women as mannish, which makes the blackface inspirations more obvious since it's very much how those Sambo designs for black women would look. Let's be real, they could have easily given Honey a unique design, but nope, laziness.
Another bottle, shall we crack a bitch across the head?
I know that sounds harsh, but they could have done better here. It doesn't justify Bosko and Honey's designs being so close to a monkey, even though they're supposed to be humans. The Congo Jazz short really does not help those allegations, man. They just don't. Which speaks to the bigger issue of black people clearly still not being seen as equals, especially not black women. just as something to entertain like animals in the circus. Thankfully, as time went on, the Looney Tunes got better with representation. Like I said, there was a consciousness at the time, though not without some growing pains like the censored 11 that came later. Honey could have had a much better design. It was very much feasible if you just think about Betty Boop, not in the vein of her being based on a black woman, because that turns out as a lie. Her design was based on a jazz singer of the time, and Honey pretty much fits that bill in the shorts. So it wasn't impossible to give her something reminiscent of those types of entertainers, especially since it wasn't hard to make respectful designs for black characters back then. But I digress. Bosko and Honey's redesigns can have a lore to them as well. You can incorporate a story familiar with a lot of black entertainers that had to hide their identities from white audiences. You could play up Bosko and Honey's white faces as masks they wore to protect themselves from racist audiences.
Y'all ain't ready for me today.
Extreme, I know, but hey man, people can recognize racism and how older generations had to deal with it. And it would be coming from a real place since plenty of black actors had to go along with blackface performances in order to even get work. Speaking to why black folks' parents back in the day had hangups with going off to be an entertainer. That's why Sanders is so big on that one. This redesign would honor that black legacy over the minstrel crap while retaining the true history with a bit of exaggeration. Doesn't need to be one-to-one exact history, it's still a cartoon. Hell, since the Looney Tunes have catchphrases, you can give him a new one. Granted, that's all folks originated with him.
Who are these niggas?
But he could get a newer one that's just a goodbye. I'd suggest Gary Coleman's What You Talking About. The catchphrases came from old acts or were inspired by them, so why not honor Gary's legacy by attaching him to an important character? To finally get to my last major point, there is a conversation to be had on whether or not Bosko and Honey could still be used in today's Looney Tunes roster. Part of me thinks he can due to the fact that he's integral to what the Looney Tunes are.
That's good.
But another part of me recognizes he's a dying to dead generation's old white people's interpretation of black people, which is still plagued in anti-black racism, even if it's supposed to be endearing or ignorantly flattering.
That's bad.
In a better world, Bosko could have been an icon to black people that animation was something we could indulge in. Instead, they try to redesign him and then move away from him when that doesn't really work, trying to hide away a bit of the history. A story many of us black people and many non-white people very much understand all too well.
That's bad.
Can I go now?
Even though black people weren't really in the conversation for the redesign, with what I came up with for Bosko and Honey, or hell, even someone else's interpretation, I think it would be a good means to make him work in this day and age. Could they fit him in the main cast of current Looney Tunes? I think so. Their personalities were the basis for a lot of the tunes that followed after them, so it wouldn't be hard to have them be among the cast. They can be the most respected out of all the tunes if you want to tell the story with them aware of their jobs. They can still be their happy-go-lucky selves being put in a crazy situation with music as a major part of them. But now they can be truly authentic without going too crazy that it circles back to being offensive. They don't need to be shy about their black origins and cultures as characters. People found Bosko and Honey to be a bit flat at the start of their shorts, mainly due to Looney Tunes shorts just being there for the gags. But now they can be put into more engaging stories that can explore them as characters or the world around them while still being hilarious. Since Bosko and Honey are the first Looney Tunes, they should be able to stand with the current cast with updated designs. If Mickey's origin started in blackface and he got a revamp and is still beloved by many, why can't Bosko and Honey get the same treatment but with full acknowledgement instead of pretending the studio's mistakes didn't exist? And this time with black artists at the helm of them. I know it seems odd that a 31-year-old got so into wanting to go over two old characters who are well past their era, but it's because I grew up on Bosko, because of Toonheads and Cartoon Network airing a lot of old and black and white cartoons before Adult Swim existed.
Oh, I made myself sad.
Remember when TV was awesome, before streaming?
I can't believe how much I hate everything.
I was a major fan of the Looney Tunes for so long, and with the Looney Tunes at least gaining some attraction in people's memories again recently, I felt the origins should be remembered, especially since Bosko and Honey are from a generation that's damn near gone. They were possibly one of the first positive portrayals of black people on the big screen, so I think they should be used, but with black people more at the helm. Hey y'all. I wanted to take some time to do a spotlight of some indie projects and shows that are already out right now, because I really think indie is a very important thing that we should show our love and support for. These are projects that are made by people who are very passionate about the medium of animation, and we definitely need to give some type of support to them, and I just wanted to use my platform to give a shout out to a few every now and then. I'm gonna make it more means to put you in the know about these indie projects and shows that are out there for you to support. This time it's for a little known studio called Love Letter Studios for their project Towards Galaxy's End. They're made by a small black owned studio made up of passionate artists that want to showcase their love of animation. Their pilot revolves around the idea that if you die prematurely and given an opportunity to come back, would you choose your old regular life or something more extraordinary? What I gathered about it, it'll have vibes similar to that of Little Witch Academia and Winx Club, so it's definitely going to be a treat for those that are fans of that style of animation, and plus we can all use more fantasy based stuff that gets a little out there. It's mostly a proof of concept for right now, but there are a lot of projects that start like that, so you should definitely head on over to their channel and keep an eye out for any new information for Towards Galaxy's End, and also keep an eye out for any new projects they might announce. I'm very excited to see what comes from this studio, and I think you should be too. So go show them the proper love and support that they need. I didn't make this video to just plead to major studios to put an old black character back into its main cast. Hell, we have so many black characters of old and new that are better representations of us. And really, it's better that they're not all under one roof. Many created by black artists.
It's a beautiful thing, man. Beautiful thing.
But I wanted to make a point about black people's place in animation history, to show that we have had a major part in America's entertainment industry for a very long time. Even if there was a lot of racial hostility or even ignorance who shaped these foundations the film industry is built upon, I honestly wasn't expecting myself to get so endeared to Bosko and Honey. Making this reignited my love of the Looney Tunes. There's a rough past, but it's still acknowledged to this day. The Looney Tunes are important pieces of animation history, and Bosko and Honey were just the first building blocks for the Looney Tunes. Looking into Bosko is how I found Kaiser Beam's Looney Tunes history essays, which gave me ammo for this video that I didn't think I needed. Also is genuinely a great video essay series. You should definitely check it out after this. The Looney Tunes push animation to new heights, but that doesn't mean they have to move fully away from their past. Coonskin and Jay-Z's story of OJ took power back from the minstrel shows, and I think that's what should continue to happen with Bosko and Honey. Bosko and Honey represent white ignorance and anti-blackness, as well as gross flattery in a very confusing way.
You better settle down over there. I'm gonna come talk to you. You know what?
If that made your brain hurt, that's a good thing. It means there's nuance here. On one hand, they showcase white hatred with their designs paying homage to those minstrel shows. But on the other hand, they showcase black people as a blueprint of a major American industry, as well as have the first positive portrayal of us, even if it didn't portray our look well. Comedy in the film industry started from films mocking black people. White people putting makeup on just to insult a group of people that did nothing to them and were trying to mind their business. But in some cases, black artists broke through and started changing the world's perception of us, like your Cab Callaways, or George Harriman's, creator of Crazy Cat and the inspiration for Felix the Cat, a major staple of animation, or your Big Mama Thorntons, or your Billie Holidays, or even the black actors that were in a lot of those old vaudeville shows that had minstrel acts, or were part of the minstrel acts. Black people did have to go along with blackface performances just to break through and make way for other black performers. Bosko and Honey as characters are perfectly fine for short form comedy.
I don't wanna lose my pride, but I'ma fuck me up a bitch.
Black couple that work their normal jobs and love music and tend to spread joy to the community around them. Black people could easily relate to these characters on a surface or even a deep level. Hell, it's how it reads in most of the shorts. Their designs are what needs changing in a way that's sensible but retaining black roots. They look way too close to monkeys, which is where the offense comes in. They don't need to be changed into a different species or scrubbed so clearly they wrap around to being offensive again. The Looney Tunes are a staple in animation history. They inspired so many great acts of different races in our time. And Bosko and Honey are where all that inspiration starts. What once was seen as racist insult towards black people can be flipped into a compliment to black people that also recognizes the real history of the film industry, as well as really push black culture to the forefront where it should be. Cause really, why shouldn't the first Looney Tunes be black? But that's just a thought.
mature. The future looks bright now, that's for sure. The turn of the century's here and you're invited to the fair, and guess what? I'm your tour guide.